Hi everyone, Ashley here and welcome to another video on my YouTube channel. Today I'm making a slimline card, and this is basically just a tall, skinny card, kind of a different shape than the typical card that you see most card makers making. And I've kind of gotten hooked on these cards because they kind of give you more space to work with and more things to do. So this is the materials that I'm putting into the card today. There is a lot of different pieces that I've already gone ahead and pre-die cut off camera, just to kind of speed up the process here, but I'm going to go through and show you each one and kind of how it builds into the overall card design. So you can see there I'm just pointing to the section that's going to contain the reveal wheel mechanism for the card. So that bottom piece there was actually cut out of some Fawn paper. It's called Gold Rush and it's from their new 2019 Fall-Winter release. And I used the reveal wheel die to actually cut the bottom rectangle shape out of it, and then just a basic hill die to cut the top. And then I used these Fawn sandy beach accent dies to make a little hole where I'm going to stick the tree. I then used the overall reveal wheel die to create the shape of the reveal wheel mechanism. And I used that half circle insert to make the hole, and that's where you're going to see the little reveal wheel turning about. I then also used one of Fawn's ocean wave border dies to cut off the top of the reveal wheel rectangle to make it look more like water. And that will be the next layer. Behind that, I wanted another layer of water. So again, I used the overall reveal wheel die to cut out the rectangle shape and then the ocean wave border to cut the water shape. One constant thing is that I used the reveal wheel rectangle to cut out all of these shapes so that they'd all have the stitches down the side and be the same width. I used the simple hillside border to create that hill, which I'm going to try and make look like snow outside the water. And again, the reveal wheel rectangle to cut the top part, which I'm going to ink blend and make it look like the sky. So all of these pieces measure slightly less wide than the card base, so there will be a white border around the whole card front. I'm going ahead and coloring the water, and this is going to form the underwater scene using the reveal wheel as well as that little piece behind it. And to do that, I'm using these alcohol inks. These pieces were cut out of Yupo paper, which is just a nice shiny paper that allows these alcohol inks to blend really nicely. And I've got a nice assortment of blues and greens here, and I'm going ahead and speeding up the video so you can see the whole thing come together. Basically, I'm just spraying on a little bit of each color into little dots, and then what I'm doing is I'm taking some plain rubbing alcohol that I've got in my bowl up in the corner there, and just dabbing it on with a brush. And I'm using strokes that are kind of going back and forth in lines, because I'm trying to make it seem like the water is almost swooshing back and forth in like a natural formation. I added in some silver mixative there to get a nice sparkly shine in the water too. And again, I'm just kind of mixing in color, going back with my brush, mixing in water, and going back and forth until I get the effect that I want. And every time I go in with my brush, I just use some more rubbing alcohol to kind of help blend the colors together. So there you can see the finished effect. It kind of looks like swooshing water that's coming and going in waves, which is exactly what I wanted. And I love the shine that you get with that silver mixative and just the alcohol inks in general. They're really beautiful and they blend really nicely. So for the sky, I'm using Distress Oxide inks, and I'm blending these just with some water. I've got my water-resistant mat down below, and I'm just smooshing a little bit of the ink onto the mat from each ink pad. The colors I'm using here are Scattered Straw, Tattered Rose, Milled Lavender, and Dusty Concord. And it's just this nice arrangement of yellows kind of moving into pinks and purples. I wanted it to look almost like a sunrise kind of sky, where you get those nice yellows and pinks, but it's a little bit more fantasy-ish too, because it's not just the typical blue, and I liked that. So I'm just coating the watercolor paper here with water. And I should have mentioned, this is Strathmore Bristol Smooth Paper, which is a really nice watercolor paper because it's thick and it holds a lot of water nicely without pilling. And I'm just applying the inks using my paintbrush and water. So I'm putting some water on my paintbrush and then bringing it over to the ink and then bringing it to my paper. And I'm just going from color to color, kind of trying to blend them together just by moving the brush strokes together. You can see that Dusty Concord is a really bright, beautiful purple, but I did want the colors on this piece to be a little bit more muted. I kind of wanted the sky to blend a little bit into the background of the card. I didn't want it to be a focal point, so I did try to blend it out with some water. And that's the great thing about these Distress Oxide inks, is that if you do find that the color is a little bit too saturated, they are so easy to move around with water. You just go back in with some water and it will pick up the color and kind of dampen it down a little bit. So once I was happy with the blend, I took some Lawn Fawn liquid shimmer and put it onto my mat there, and I'm going to apply this to the entire piece using some water. So I just put some water on my paintbrush, and then I'm going to bring it over to the shimmer, mix it together, and then paint it right onto my piece. And it's kind of hard to see in the video, but this does give a really beautiful layer of shine in real life. It kind of makes the whole piece sparkle in the light, and it's just really, really pretty. This is also another one of their new products from this recent release. So now that I'm done with all the background components that are going to make up the scene building aspect of the card, I'm going to go ahead and start with the coloring. I went ahead and stamped all of these images off camera because there are a lot of images and I didn't want to take up too much time in the video with just stamping. But as a recap, I used Gina Amalgam ink for the black ink, and I used Neenah Solar White paper for the paper, because this is a really great Copic coloring paper. It's really bright white and it holds the alcohol ink really nicely. I'm using some reds and grays to color in all of the Santa hats, and then I'm going to get started on these fishies. These fishes, as well as the adorable seaweed Christmas tree that's just so cute, are from Lawn Fawn's latest release. The stamp set is called Christmas Fishes. One technique that I tend to use when I'm coloring like this is to go through and color all of the similarly colored images together. So that's why I just went and colored all of the Christmas hats together, because they used all the same reds. And now I'm trying to use the same oranges on some fish, the same pinks on some other fish. It kind of just makes the coloring process more seamless so that you don't have to always be reaching for different marker colors all the time. So I know I like to watch coloring a lot, so I did leave all of the coloring in this video. I'm going to just put on some music now so you can watch the coloring and enjoy, but if you don't like watching this, please feel free to jump ahead in the video to when the coloring is done and you'll see the rest of the card coming together. So sit back, relax, and enjoy. Okay, so all the coloring is completed and now it is time to assemble the card. As you can see up in the top left corner there, I also just went ahead off camera and stamped out the sentiment with some white embossing on red. This sky piece came out really cute. I am trying to show the sparkle, but again, it's really hard to see in the camera, unfortunately. In real life, it's quite beautiful and very shimmery. So this sky piece I'm going to just glue directly onto the card base. I kind of wanted it to sink into the background. I didn't want it to take up much interest or attention on the card, so I'm just going to glue it directly down without any 3D effects. So I'm using my Tombow Mono Multi Glue here just to glue this down into my white card base. The card base itself is actually made from Neenah Solar white cardstock as well in the 110-pound variety, so it's a bit thicker and just better for a card base. I went ahead and glued down that white glittery hillside in the same way using the same glue, and now I'm doing the same thing with this extra layer of water, just using some liquid glue to stick it down on top of the hill. So now it's time to assemble the reveal wheel, and I remember when I first got started making reveal wheel cards I was super intimidated by them, but there's a few tips and tricks that you can use to make it easier on yourself. One is to use this stencil to line everything up. You can actually buy these stencils from Lawn Fawn, but I made this one using some vellum. All you have to do is use that reveal wheel notched circle, the part that's scalloped around the edges, to cut out the overall scalloped circle. And then you can just use that same insert you would use on the reveal wheel front to cut out those semicircles, and I just did that twice. So that way I know exactly where I want the semicircles to be, and I can use it to line up my images. So that's what I've done here, and I'm gluing down some music notes all around in the empty spaces from that semicircle. And then I know that when I turn my reveal wheel, those music notes will be visible because they're visible in the stencil, if that makes sense. And I just use some tape to glue the stencil to the back of the water piece so that you can take it off later. So now the next piece to this reveal wheel is to put some little foam squares onto that small white circle and stick the whole thing together with a little brad. And I think this is just a Tim Holtz mini brad. You can get them in packs of a lot, and they last forever. So then you can pull those pieces apart and the brad will stick everything together, and that's that little white circle along with the water notch circle and the stencil together with it. I'm just taking my time here to separate those brad pieces, and there you go. So once that's done, you can take the release paper off of those little pieces of foam tape, and then you're going to want to line up that notched circle with your reveal wheel front. So you'll see me doing that now. And this is where that stencil made out of vellum comes in handy, because you want to just adjust that circle so that you can't see the vellum anymore, but just barely. You want it to be right on the edge of where the window is on the reveal wheel front. So once you have it lined up, you just hold it together with your fingers and put the whole thing down on your card base where you want it to be. I just scooched the video ahead a little bit here because it took me a while to line everything up, as it always does. But when you've got it, you can just stick it down and you'll see that your front kind of just pops off because there's no glue on it. But your little notched circle stays down because it's attached to that little white circle that had the foam tape on it. When you've done that, you can then pull apart the brad, pull off the tape, and pull your stencil off. So it easily comes off, and then you're just left with your little notched circle with all of the little music notes on it, in my case. And then you can pull those pieces apart on the brad again and make sure everything sticks together. So there you have your little notched circle that turns nicely on your card base. Then you just want to put your card front on top of it. And here you can see another little tip is that you can use that same vellum stencil to make sure that you're putting the foam in the right place on the back of your reveal wheel front. So you don't want to put foam tape where that notched circle needs to turn, and you can use your stencil to tell you where that will be. So again, you line it up on the front and then you pat it down, and with all the tape there, it stays down nicely. And there you can turn the reveal wheel. Just as a note, you do want to use foam on the back of your reveal wheel front as well, because you want it to be lifted up and not squishing down that circle. It needs space to move under there. So after that, the last touch is to just put that sandy hill down at the bottom, and I'm just using some liquid glue there to stick it on. So there is the entire card scene built together, and you can see that that reveal wheel turns super well and those music notes kind of go around. Now it's time to assemble all of those stamped images onto the card front. And I'm just speeding this part up a little bit because it took a while and there are a lot of images. So this way you can see the whole thing come together without taking too much time. So I wanted the bottom of the card here to kind of look like an underwater ocean scene. And the bottom, of course, is the sand where it's the bottom of the ocean. So I focused on putting things down there that would be sitting on something, like the crab or rocks or presents or grass growing out of the sand. And at this point, I'm using all liquid glue to glue the elements down. I'm mainly using Ranger Multi-Medium Matte, which is a really nice matte glue. And the reason why being matte is nice is that when it dries, it's not shiny, and it doesn't really show up on your card. So if any glue ends up kind of spilling out of the side of your images, so you glue something down and you know how sometimes like you put too much glue and then a little bit squeezes out of the sides, I mean I do that all the time. For the matte glue, you don't really see it when it dries, it's almost invisible. So I love it for that reason because you can't really see my mistakes, which is awesome. I also used some foam squares to pop a couple of the elements up, so like the little clam present and the little crab, anything that I thought might be visually more interesting I popped up with some foam squares. I'm now arranging the rest of the fish onto the water part of the card, and I'm using a combination of foam squares and liquid glue to glue these guys down. I'm mostly using the foam squares on the images that have the Santa hats because I wanted them to sort of pop up and be the focus of interest on this particular card because it's a holiday card. So I wanted you to focus on the little fishes that have hats. And the cool thing about these stamps, which you didn't really see because I stamped them off camera, but the jellyfish and the crab come in the stamp set without their faces, and then you get a whole bunch of extra little faces that you can stamp on them. So I particularly use the ones that look like they're singing for this card because I had the music notes going around in the reveal wheel and I wanted to look like they're caroling. So I'm also adding in a couple little music notes in speech bubbles here that come in the stamp set too, and I had stamped those out in some purple ink because I wanted them to sort of stand out from the rest of the images that were stamped in black. And I just love how the whole scene just looks like they're caroling. So now at the top here, I'm putting, of course, the elements that wouldn't normally be underwater, so a yeti, a bird, a bear, and these guys are also joining in on the musical fun. So a couple of these images are actually from a separate Lawn Fawn stamp set. It's an older set and it's called Critter Concert, and that set comes with a whole bunch of little critters that are playing musical instruments. So that's where the bear is from, and that's also where the conducting bird is from, and I just think that bird is so cute with its little music stand and its conducting baton. So for these guys, I'm using a combination of liquid glue and double-sided tape to stick them down, because I find that liquid glue doesn't really stick very well to glitter paper, and that's what the hill is made out of. So for anything that's sticking onto the hill, I'm using the double-sided tape. And for anything that's sticking onto just the background with the ink, I can use some liquid glue. So I've got the Yeti, and he's holding a tambourine that comes from that Critter Concert stamp set that I was just mentioning. And then I've got the conducting bird, which is meant to be sort of conducting all of the animals that are playing their instruments, or even the caroling fish. So he's kind of guiding the whole thing, and I just thought that was really cute. So I'm popping a couple of these elements up on some foam tape as well, just to give them a little bit of extra emphasis. So there you have it. That is the card for today. This was a bit of a doozy. It took a lot of time to stamp and color all these elements. There is a lot going on in this card, but I really love how it turned out. And there you can see that with the reveal wheel, you can turn the little circle and have the music notes going by, so it looks like the caroling is in progress and all the fishies are singing and all of the animals are playing their instruments and making the music. So just to give you a little bit of a closer look here, there's the top section with the animals playing the instruments on the glittery hill. There you can see a bunch of the fishes, and actually off camera, I went ahead and added some glossy accents onto the fishes to give them a bit of shine, and that's what you can see here when I turn the card. So there you have it. That's the card for today. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you liked it, feel free to like and subscribe. If you subscribe, you'll get notified when I upload more videos, which I do on a weekly basis. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye!